Hello, and welcome back to Literally My Life, My Guide to Girlhood. I am so happy to be recording our sixth episode. I cannot believe I started this podcast 6 weeks ago. That is absolutely insane. I'm so happy that I'm doing this podcast. All of the feedback that I've gotten from people has been just so positive and just so I can't even keep up with it at this point. Like all the feedback, all the love, I love that. And I'm so happy that I've gotten a lot of comments or not comments, but responses from people telling me essentially that I really they're relating to me and that they understand what I'm saying and they're glad that they don't feel alone in what they're feeling. And that's like the whole point of this podcast. I want everyone here to feel accepted. I want everyone here to feel like they're being heard. I want you to know your feelings aren't alone. And that's why I'm so glad that I'm doing that for you guys and that I started this podcast. So I'm just so happy to be here. So today's episode is going to be about diet culture. So this was an episode that I proposed the idea around the time that I recorded female friendships, but you guys wanted to hear female friendships more, so I uploaded that one. But today we are going to be talking about diet culture. I'm really excited to be talking about this because this is something that I think has affected me for most of my teenage years. You know, I'm almost 17 now. I've been a teenager for about 4 years. I think diet culture has definitely stayed with me, and I think I'm not like an expert in this field. I'm obviously not like a nutritionist or anything, but I'm somebody who has I have experience with diet culture. So let's get into it. Let's talk. So my experience with diet culture and diets and all of that came around, I'd say 2017. I was 10. 10 worrying about this kind of stuff, but I'll start with how I came to realize this. So as a kid, I was probably a little overweight. I was never really told that by my doctors. I don't think I was out of range for my BMIs and stuff, but I think I was just a little overweight. If you look at pictures of me, you're like, okay, she was a little cute, little baby fat, little chunky girl, and that's okay. You're 10. You're not gonna be that weight for the rest of your life, you know? But that's okay. So I was 10 years old, I was a little chunky, and I went to my neighborhood elementary school. So I had no issues at this elementary school until my best friend and I, at the time, not Sky, but my best friend at the time had kind of ditched me. And she had gotten this new best friend, this new girl who'd moved from Arizona to Chicago, and they had become best friends, and my best friend had kind of ditched me. And I was really heartbroken about that. I could do a whole other episode on friendship breakups. I say that all the time. I could do a whole other episode. I could do a whole other episode about this, but I really could. If I separately talked about that stuff, we'd be sitting here forever. Okay, so I try to limit these to 30 minutes. So, but yeah, so my best friend had kind of ditched me, and she made this new friend, and I was like, okay, that sucks. So I was having a little moment about it. I wasn't even in Chicago that summer. I was in Maryland. But once I got back to Chicago, it was just so much drama. And you're 10, so you're inclined to go through stuff like that, but whatever. Well, this new friend that had moved from Arizona, we're going to call her Blush. We're going to call her Blush. So, Blush, I don't know why, but Blush she wasn't feeling your girl. She didn't like me. Now, I'm not exactly sure why, to this day, she, moved here and didn't like me, because we had never really talked or had that many interactions. So I don't know what it was, but she didn't like me. So, Blush said some stuff, and she would just say things about me, and I didn't really care. I was, 10, I was, into this, I had this, really bad JoJo Siwa phase. I, wore these big bows every day, and I was, so into my own thing, and, playing with my dolls, and, hanging out with my mom. I was just I didn't really care about what she said. But one thing that stood out to me that she said was that I was fat. So she was like, "You are fat." And I was like, "Oh, what?" I'd never been called fat before. I'd never been labeled chunky before. Like, it wasn't a reality to me. She was just like, you're fat. And I was like, oh, it was like such a shocker. I was like, no, I'm not. And then I started to like look at myself differently. I'm like, am I fat? And she was like, yeah, no, you're fat. And she was kind of rough. Like, she would just say like nasty stuff. She'd be like, you're so big and you're so fat and you look like a man and you're disgusting. Like, ugh, I can't even look at, like, this girl was so mean. Like, and I remember it to this day because of how much it affected me. Like, that's why I think that's another lesson I've learned. Like, you have to be very careful what you say to people because something you can forget you said in a day, somebody can remember for a lifetime. And that's an example with this girl. Like, I'm sure she doesn't remember or like really care that she was like, oh, I used to like say she was fat, like whatever. But that really stuck with me. Like, that really was like, am I fat? Like, that made me question my body for years and like develop like really bad body dysmorphia over like something she said like that was so silly. But anyways, she called me fat. So, like, this girl didn't like me. This girl called me fat. And I was like, oh, okay. So 2017 passed, 2018 came around. I was living the life. I was having a great time, but she still didn't like me. She was still calling me fat. I was like, okay, like that's whatever. But then I started to hear it from more people. Like, I wasn't necessarily being called fat, but some of my family members, not like my parents, but like some other family members, were starting to say that I had gained weight. And I think it was so inappropriate to talk to a child about that because I was like, that shapes the way the child is and the way the child looks at things and looks at themselves, and it can develop, like, that child can develop really bad body dysmorphia at a really young age. And I think it was so inappropriate that the adults around me were like, oh, do you notice that you have a big stomach now and da-da-da. And I hated my stomach for years because of that. I had the biggest insecurity about my stomach. Like, I never wore crop tops. I always wore like big turtlenecks. Like, I really hated my stomach because because of those comments. But let's go back to the summer, like, it's 2018. So I'm starting to grow, obviously. So, because I'm 5'10". So, obviously, I'm starting to grow. I was about 5 at this time, which was, like, incredibly tall for a fifth grader. And I start to grow, and I obviously start to gain weight as I start to get bigger, but I never thought anything was wrong with my weight or the way I looked or anything like that. It was just like the people around me who were just starting to make comments, not just blush, but I'm talking about family members, family friends, just saying stuff about me and my weight, and it hurt. Like, it really did hurt. And then I remember I was sitting in a Baker Square. This was like December 2018. And I was like hanging out with one of my family members, and this family member said to me, like, you lost so much weight. I'm so proud of you. You look so much better. And that stuck with me for a very long time. Like, that was very hurtful to me because it was like, I wasn't at the point where I was like keeping track of my weight. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't like stepping on scales. Like, I wasn't watching my calories, thinking about what I ate. So if I naturally lost weight, I naturally lost some weight. If I naturally looked a little smaller, I naturally looked a little smaller. And that's not a big deal. Like, your worth, and it's taken me years to realize this, and I'm still working on it, but your worth does not equate to your weight. You are so much more than the number you are on the scale. Like, and the thing is, nobody really cares. Like, I don't think, when people, like, when I was in middle school, and this girl was like, you're so fat, you look like a dude, you're disgusting, no guy's ever gonna look at you, you're gonna end up alone. Like, this girl was so mean. But it's so stupid because you're somebody, like, that's such an irrational fear I had. Like, oh, if I'm fat, no guy's gonna like me. First of all, that's just not true. Because there are a lot, and I see it now, especially with, like, all the shows, like, all the plus size women I'm seeing on TV. there are men who love them a big woman. They fetishize big women. And I'm talking about like, like obviously like more plus sized women. And they are absolutely beautiful. And there are men who are like appreciating that beauty. There are men who strictly date big women. There are men who strictly date tall women like me. They're like, man, I love me a tall girl. I need me a tall girl. And I've actually met a couple of guys like that. Like a lot of the guys I've gone out with have been like, oh, I have a thing for tall girls. And, I've been their type. So you're somebody's type. Like never feel like you're too ugly, you're too big, you're too tall to be with someone. Or you're too skinny. You're too short. You're like, oh, I'm basic. I'm a basic blonde. I'm basic this. You're somebody's type. Somebody out there, you're exactly their type because you're absolutely fearfully and wonderfully made. Like, I'm literally quoting a Bible verse on you, girl. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. And I wish somebody would have, like, said this to me 5 or 6 years ago and I could have avoided, like, the path I went down. Anyway, so so I think I changed schools. I went to an academic center in the 7th and 8th grade. And the fat comments kind of stopped. Like, it was a very chill environment. Nobody ever really called me fat, but at that point I had started to feel fat because of so many people saying things about me in the past and my family friends talking about me and my family, and I just started to feel like I was fat, and I just started to feel like a bigger presence. I had a crush on this guy in the 7th grade. Shout out to you. But I don't think he'll ever listen to this podcast. But I had a crush on this guy in the 7th grade. I totally liked him. And I did not want to talk to him because I thought I was too big for him. I thought I was just like too much of a fat girl. And I can't even like explain to you guys how much being called fat really messed with my self-esteem. But that was like just one of the instances. And I never really like told this guy how I felt. Never really got into him because I just felt so fat. Like I felt like I was just not good enough for this guy, and it was the most heartbreaking experience. So then we go into quarantine. We're all the way into 2020. I go into quarantine in 7th grade. At first in quarantine, I'm like eating Oreos, I'm like enjoying my honey buns, I'm like hanging around the house. And next thing I know I gained like 20 or 30 pounds, which is so normal. Like everybody gained weight during the quarantine because you have nothing to do. You can't really leave your house. So you still have to eat. And at that point I was not familiar with like at-home workouts or like doing stuff like that. So I did not I didn't really know how to lose weight. So I was just eating and not losing, like burning off the fat that I was eating. And so I obviously started to gain weight. Like that's normal. Like that's such a normal thing. Like gaining and losing weight, like your weight fluctuates over time. Like, it's such a normal thing. And the fact that I like used to step on the scale like every 2 days and just be like, did I gain weight? Did I gain weight? Did I gain weight? Like I had this constant fear of gaining weight. It sucked. It's so sad that a 13-year-old was doing this. Like that's the worst thing. So, anyways, quarantine extends all the way through like April 2021, and I'm at a heavy weight. Like I'm at the heaviest weight I ever was, and I stayed that way probably through like December 2021. So for like a year, I'm not going to say the weight I was because I'm still like conscious about it. Like you see that I still have like that internal feel. Like I can't be like, oh, I was this many pounds, because like I just hate saying that. Like I'll never tell anyone my weight. Like I'm just so insecure about it. But I was a heavier weight, which was fine because you're normal and you're human and your weight fluctuates. But although I wasn't hearing the fat jokes anymore because I went to high school, I met a lot of really nice people and a lot of really nice people who more focused on my internal beauty more than my external beauty, I still really felt fat. And I felt very insecure. I started to, because you don't just feel insecure about your weight. That insecurity translates into how you feel about yourself. And sooner or later, you are picking apart pieces of yourself that you can't change. Like, I start to get insecure about my cheekbones. I start to get insecure about my nose. I start to get insecure about my hair. Is my hair long enough? Is it thick enough? Is my nose small enough? Do I fit the Eurocentric beauty standards of having a small nose and small lips? But my lips need to be big because people like big lips. And I'm supposed to be skinny, but I'm supposed to have a really big butt. And I'm supposed to have really, really big boobs. But I'm supposed to have like really toned legs and like really small feet. And I'm not supposed to be tall, but I'm supposed to be tall enough. Like the impossible beauty standards that it has for women, which is why I think there's such like, with the story honestly do feel that if I didn't work to heal from all of that, to heal from the weight trauma, to heal from the body dysmorphia, to heal my insecurities, I would have totally gone to the pipeline of trying to get plastic surgery. Plastic surgery, I think, is a business that is targeted at self-hate. Like, self-hate is a billion-dollar industry. People, if you think your lips are too thin, you can put literally silicone in them. Is silicone what goes in lip filler? I'm not very educated, because I used to think that people had to get their lips done like surgery, but then I realized that filler was a thing. But no. If you hate your lips, you can get lip filler. If you think your cheeks aren't defined enough, you can get cheek filler. You think your hair is too thin, you can put on very long wigs and big weaves, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if that is what makes you happy about yourself, that's fine. But I feel like plastic surgery is, especially with all the celebrities who get it now, like I watch a lot of reality TV. Like, you guys know I'm a reality TV junkie. And I can tell you, I can count like on my hands how many people women really, how many women on these shows have real bodies, like have no work done. I can count it on my hands. And that's so sad. And that's why I say self-hate is just a billion-dollar industry. Like, I think I would have totally gotten plastic surgery. I would have totally gotten liposuction. I would have totally got a BBL. I would have totally got my lips done. I would have totally got extensions. But I started to realize, like, I just don't need that stuff. Like, you start to realize, and that's essentially the point of this podcast. Diet culture is stupid. As long as you're healthy, as long as you have feet that allow you to walk on them, as long as you have arms that allow you to lift stuff and get stuff done, as long as you have a mouth that speaks and eyes that see, your body is fine. Like, you are so much more than what you see on a scale. You're so much more than what you see on social media. And self-hate, like, people market off of it now, which is so sad. People are marketing off of your insecurities. Like, I used to get on Instagram and I had a terrible habit of comparing myself to Instagram models. And then I realized, like, you know what? They paid for their bodies. Like, I'm sure if I had, and I think you guys all know who I'm talking about, if I had billions of dollars to look like I wanted to look, I'm sure I would. Like, I would have, like I said, like, the big butt and the long hair and all that stuff. But, like, it's stupid. Like, I'm glad I don't, because it's so stupid. And over the last, I'd say 2 years especially, I have really learned to like who I am, to appreciate who I am as a person, as a friend, as a daughter. You know what I mean? Like, I like who I am externally and internally. Like, you know what? I've decided, like, there's a Pinterest quote I really love. I probably have quoted it on here before, but it was like, today I decided I'm beautiful. Life is too short to be hating your reflection. And I absolutely love that quote, because it's true. Like, as somebody who's just had a near-death experience in December, life is too short. Like, why did I spend so many years questioning my weight, questioning my nose, my hair, my cheekbones, my legs? Because I have a perfectly functioning body, and when I didn't have a perfectly functioning body, I missed it. Like, I'll take back whatever weight I was, as long as I can walk again, as long as I can eat on my own again, as long as I can breathe again, because I was unable to do all of those three at one point. You know what I mean? So that's essentially the moral of the story. And I just think comparison and self-hate is just the thief of your joy. Like the Bible says, comparison is the thief of joy. And that is so true. Like when I mean, like, you just don't have to get on Instagram and compare yourself to Instagram models, because 9 times out of 10, their photos are edited and they've had work done. And to me, if you had work done, like, I can't compare myself to you. Like, there's nothing wrong with getting plastic surgery if that's what you want to do, but don't act like you're prettier than everyone. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to consider you like, oh, you're so much prettier than me because you've had work done. That just kind of disqualifies you to me. But this isn't about people with plastic surgery, because if you decided to get plastic surgery to make you feel better about yourself, then that is absolutely valid, and that is how you feel and how you chose to deal with your insecurities. I am just preaching that you don't need plastic surgery. You don't need to change really what you look like, because you're beautiful. Like, if that's the one thing you get from this podcast today, then let that be it. Like, you are absolutely beautiful inside and out, and life is way too short for you to be hating your reflection. You know what I mean? And so I've spent the last year and a half really developing like my internal beauty. Like, yeah, maybe on the outside I've lost weight. Maybe on the outside I've grown my hair out, and maybe on the outside I look better. But I'm healing my inner fat girl. The girl who liked to binge eat, the girl who could eat birthday cakes, the girl who liked Kit Kats. Like, even though I can't eat like that anymore, obviously for health reasons, I still indulge in a treat. I don't restrict what I eat. Like, I restrict what I eat, but I'm saying if I want to have a donut, I'm going to have a donut. If I want to drink a soda pop, I'm going to drink a soda pop. If I want to have 2 candy bars, I'm going to eat 2 candy bars. If I want to go out to lunch with my friends, I'm not going to be looking at the calories on the menu anymore. I've grown so much. I'm not weighing myself every day. I don't care about what I see on the scale. As long as I have a functioning, healthy body that walks, that talks, that eats, that breathes, then I'm happy with myself. And I hope you can be happy too. So the moral of the story, the moral of this podcast is that diet culture is essentially very stupid, and that you are absolutely beautiful, and that you don't need, you know what I mean? Like, you don't need anyone's validation for what you look like, because the only validation that you need is your own and God. Like, I'm so serious. So work on your internal beauty. Work on how you treat people. Work on how you respond to things. Work on your calmness, your temper, your anger, your kindness, how you can spread joy, how you can help others, more than what you look like. Because I feel like at the end of the day, on your grave, like on your tombstone, it's not going to be like, oh, she was so beautiful. It's going to be like kind, loving, fearful. You know what I mean? And that's what's important. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of Literally My Life, My Guide to Girlhood. I love you guys, and I will see you guys next Monday. Feel free to share this podcast with friends, talk about it, discuss it, and you guys can always, always, always text me about it. I love you all. See you guys next week.